When performing maintenance on the Epilog laser Helix, Mini24, and Mini18, I would recommend having a standard set of Allen wrenches. The longer rounded end kind help to get into smaller places. Also a Phillips and flathead screwdriver. The bearing grease, white lithium bearing grease from Epilog, and from Epilog the lens cleaner and the tissue papers. Those would be the standard tools I'd recommend having on hand for just about any service and maintenance needed to perform on the Epilog lasers. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate how to clean the optics on the Helix. This would also apply to the Mini18 and the Mini24. With the machine powered off, I'm going to move the carriage out over the center of the table to give me easy access to the lens. Once I have easy access to the lens assembly, I'm going to use a 3/32 inch long ball end Allen wrench to remove this lens assembly. To remove the lens assembly, using the two screws, we're going to take these two screws out. One, and two. And with that, the lens assembly comes off, and we can have easy access to the bottom side where we remove the lens, and then also the side where we can remove the mirror. Again, this is how to thoroughly clean the top and bottom of the lens and the mirror on the Mini Helix, Mini18, and Mini24. So once we have the lens assembly removed from the carriage, we're going to use the lens cleaner that came with the machine and also use the lens tissues that came with the system. If you don't have the lens cleaner or the tissues, please order more from Epilog Tech Support. So I'm now going to show how to remove the lens from the assembly using a 5/64 standard Allen wrench. Now that we have removed the 4 screws from the assembly, we're going to pull off the top bracket. And I'll zoom in here so we can see this a little better. So we're going to pull off this little aluminum bracket, turn it over, and this is the size. This is the side that does not have the O-ring. The O-ring stays in the assembly. Now we're going to remove the lens carefully, but I'll also note at this point that you understand that this is the flat side of the lens. And the flat side of the lens always faces down toward the bottom of the machine. So that's the flat side. Then there is a curved side. So that's always bubble up when it's installed into the system. So curved side up, flat side down. Now to clean the lens thoroughly, I'm going to use some of the tissues, and I'm going to lay that down. And I'm going to take the lens, put that on top of the tissue, and then we'll add some of the lens cleaner. And I'll put some of that gently on the lens. And then we'll take that, fold that over, and then we'll use both sides of the tissue that is now with the lens cleaner to gently wipe the lens and the debris off of the lens, top and bottom. So we want to inspect our lens to be sure there's no scratches, no flaking of coatings. We want to make sure that it's dry, clean, and shiny. If you see a lot of scratching or dings or halos of flaking of coatings, then it would be time to replace this. And you can also order that lens from epiloglaser.com. So we now have our lens clean. Now we're going to remove the mirror from the assembly. Slide that out of the way. This time you'll notice when we remove the aluminum housing for the mirror, pay attention where the O-ring is located. So these are smaller screws, again using a 5/64 Allen wrench. So now we've removed the 4 screws from the lens assembly. We're going to move this out of the way. And we see that we have the O-ring here. We'll set that aside. And then we'll pop out our mirror. So the mirror will come out of the assembly. Set that aside. And now we can see the quality and the appearance of the mirror. We'll do the same thing. We'll take some of the white tissues. We'll lay that down there. Apply some lens cleaner. Clean that off with the tissues till it's dry and clean. We're inspecting the mirror at this point to have no scratches or flaking of coatings. We want that to be real bright and shiny and clean. And there's only one side that needs to be cleaned, the other is simply the back side. So now that we have thoroughly cleaned the mirror and the lens and inspected them for any flaws, we're going to install those back into the assembly in reverse order. Once you have all the screws in place, go ahead and tighten them all down, making sure not too tight. You want it just snug. You don't have to bear down hard, but you don't want that mirror moving inside the assembly. So make sure you get that snug, not loose, but not too tight. There's our mirror now in place, cleaned. Now that we have our mirror installed, let's put in our lens. Remember, when placing the lens in the assembly, you want the flat side to be facing down to the table. So that means we have to put it in upside down at this point. So the flat side down, O-ring is already in the assembly. Taking our aluminum housing, sliding that over the lens, being careful not to scratch it, and then we'll install our screws. Once we have the screws in place, we'll tighten up on the screws. Now we're going to reinstall the lens assembly onto the X-axis carriage. We'll do that by using the 2 screws that were taken out, and we're going back to our 3/32 inch Allen wrench. I like to start from the inside, the most inward center screw. So I slide that through the hole first with my Allen wrench. So that's going to sit basically like this. Then I'll slide that onto the assembly. So So by sliding that onto the assembly, making sure that I'm just snug at this point, getting it into place. I'm also making sure that the grooves are lined up, that I'm not crooked as it's installed. And then I'll do the second screw. So once we have both of those screws tightened up and snug, our lens assembly, the mirror and the lens have been thoroughly cleaned. We've evaluated for any scratches, flaking of coatings, burnt spots, and so all of the lens cleaning solution and the wiping papers, the mirror and the lens can all be ordered from Epilogue Tech Support, and that's tech, T-E-C-H, at epiloglaser.com.